Hey everyone, today we're going to learn about Adobe InDesign. Adobe InDesign is a layout program. I'm going to go ahead and click on the icon to open it, and you get this standard dialog box. I'm going to go ahead and hit Create New, and it'll give me a lot of options for the new document that I want to create. I'm going to just stick with a letter size, and if you go in here, so you can go to Print, and you just hit Letter. I'm going to be using the units as picas. So picas are a measurement that's great to use for layout design. There are 6 picas in an inch. There are 12 points in a pica, which means there are 72 points in an inch. And it gives you something relative to think about when you're setting type. I'm going to ignore everything else. I am going to turn off facing pages. You would use this if you're designing a book, but we're just going to design a one sheet of paper right now. And I'm also going to skip over some of the other items and just jump to bleed. So bleed is what exists outside of the artboard, and you want to have bleed turned on in InDesign from the very beginning. This way, when you go to print a document and cut it out, you have extra of an image or of a color background so that you don't see the white paper. It's also how printers expect files. So the bleed I like to use is 1/8 of an inch, which I already know is 9 points. So I could type 9 points here, and you'll see if I click on another box, it just fills in. I can also type in 0.125 inches, which is how many inches it is. So I can go here and just say 0.125 IN, and I hit tab, and it would also convert it to 9 points. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit create. The way InDesign works is that it's not actually embedding the images into this new document. So you're not taking your logo from Illustrator and embedding it. You're not taking your artwork from Photoshop, illustration, photography, whatever it might be, and embedding it. You're remembering the link to where it exists. So this is also a time where file organization is very, very important. You can't move an image without InDesign knowing where you moved it, or it won't know what to display. So the way it works is you use frames. I'm just going to grab the rectangle frame tool and just grab a frame, and you place items inside these frames. The key command on a Mac is Command D, and you also can go to File and Place. And I saved on my desktop just an image that I got from Unsplash, Benjamin Davies. It's a beautiful landscape. And it comes in. So when that came in, it was really, really large. Now I want to get to see it. So there's all different ways to help to get this to fit inside of the frame. And if you go up to the top and you have your advanced settings set up, you can fit your content here. You also can go under Object and Fitting, and you can fit it here. There's also a key command that I really like, which is Command Option Shift and E, and that will fit it proportionally inside the frame. You can see the frame is still larger, and I can edit the frame by making it smaller. If I want to move around the artwork inside of the frame, I want to use my direct select arrow, which is A. So I can go in here and I can move this around, and you can see it's moving it inside of that frame. It's not moving where the frame exists. I can also grab on to the handles of the edge, and I can make this larger. I can go back by hitting V to the selection arrow, and I can make the box, the frame itself larger. You can even rotate the image inside of here. So I'm flipping it now. You can see it kind of went off screen. I can move it back in. We can have an upside down landscape if we want. So you're editing, you're moving the image inside of the frame. So that's a very basic understanding of how you place images into InDesign. There's a lot more in InDesign to learn, and I'm going to go through an overview of a lot of basics. And hopefully this is a video you can come back to revisit if you want to remind yourself how to do certain tasks in InDesign. So InDesign, it works with pages. You can have multiple pages. I'm just going to pull my page palette out over here. There are also layers in InDesign. I'm going to pull that out too, because I would like to share with you how I like to set up my files. So I'm going to bring those out. You see you have page number 1 here, and you also have your master pages. The master pages work so that anything you put on a master page will then show up on the page that is applied to that master. So if you look to my page number 1, it says A right there, and this is A master. So anything I do on this master will automatically happen on A master. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some margins and columns. So being a layout program, structure is very important. I always like to have 12 columns. I find it's a very flexible grid. And within this grid, you could say it's only a 3-column grid by going over 4 columns. I'll show you what 3 columns looks like, but I like the flexibility of 12. You also can adjust the margins. A trick with editorial design is that having uneven margins, so unlocking this and maybe making a larger margin on the top, can really have a big impact on the overall layout. So I'm going to go ahead and make that margin larger on the top. Okay, so these are my margins and columns. We also can use guidelines, and this is students get very confused about. So you can also create guidelines. Now these are horizontal lines across the page that also can help with placement. You can do it by creating them in here. So I will preview it and just show you what it might look like. I'm going to hit cancel though. You also can grab from your ruler and just bring them down. So you might want to have a guide here and maybe one at the bottom. It might have to do with where you're going to align your page numbers or something. Now, personally, this is one of my tricks I like to do. I like to select both guides and I like to make a new layer that's just for my guidelines. And what you do is once these are selected, you just grab this little square here and you can move it right up. So I'm going to go ahead and move those. So now I have guidelines. I also like to have a file that's just for my art. And I like to have, a layer. And I like to have a layer that's just for my text. That's kind of default. There's a lot more. Sometimes I have a background layer. So I might add a background if I'm going to have a colored background. So those are just some layers that I like to have. So now that I added this in the master page, I should be able to go to page 1 and there we go. We have everything. So I have my image still here and I have my guides. Now I have something to kind of decide where I want to put things. So I'm going to go ahead and make this image go all the way out. I also would like to turn it back around. It's a little disjointed. Hit my key command to fit it in and just kind of scale it up and get it in there. All right. So here is my image. So what you're seeing here are columns, and these are called gutters. Gutters go between the columns and give us space when we add text so that the 2 paragraphs within columns don't run into each other. So I'm going to go ahead and you can either grab the type tool or the frame tool. You grab the type tool, you can click and hold, and it automatically draws a text frame. So I'm going to go ahead and put a text frame here, knowing that I want to add some copy. And just for sake of time, I'm going to use this command called fill with placeholder text, and it's just going to add text for me to play around with. So now I have something. Let's add a period here, make that our headline. Let's say this is our subhead. So we'll kind of cut it off there. And then that's our body. Another important key command is how to show hidden characters. This shows where we have returns and something called soft returns. Command Option I is the key command. You also can go to type and you can say hide hidden characters or show hidden characters. What you're looking at here is a return. And there is another type of return called a soft return, and that is a shift return. And I'm going to go ahead and take out this return, and I'll just add one here just to show you. And then if you zoom in on that, you can see that's a shift return. And that will not hold space after. And I'm going to talk to you about what space after is in a second. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to select on my type. I'd like to just change from this default typeface just for this demo. Let's go ahead and let's find Avenir. It's kind of my easy go-to. Do I have Avenir loaded? Maybe I don't. Let's see. Avenir? Nope. Okay. Let's just do Gills then. I just saw that was loaded. Okay. So let's do Gil Sans. Whoa. Looks like I only have bolds. I don't want a bold typeface. So take back the Gil. Let's do branding grotesque. Okay. So I pick a typeface I like, and there's 2 dialog boxes. One is Command T, and that's your character, and the other is Command Option T, and that's your paragraph. These are very important key commands to know. You will use them often. And this is how you set both your character styles and also your paragraph styles. So I'm going to go ahead and select the headline. I'd like that to be a little bit bolder, and I'd like that to be larger. And I'll go ahead and set the caption as well. Sorry, the subhead as well. I'm going to make that medium. I'm also going to make that a all caps, let's say, make it a little smaller. And I'm going to add some tracking. Tracking is the space between all the characters. So I'll add a little bit of tracking. Now it looks like my heading is kind of crashing into my subhead. So I'd like to add some space. This is where you use space after. So space after works on the return. It's in the paragraph dialog box. So I go here and this is my space after. So I can say, okay, I think like 8 points looks nice, right? A key command for turning off the column and gutters is Command:. So I'll turn that off. Another really great key command is how to hide these frame edges. I really don't like looking at them. So I'm going to go to hide frame edges, and you can see the key commands are always listed next to the items. So I'll go ahead and click that. Okay. So I'm looking good. I think maybe I need a little space after the subhead too. So I'm going to go ahead and select that line and set that space there. There we go. And then we don't have any paragraph indicators. We don't know that this paragraph ended. So I also need a paragraph indicator, which I'll use a space instead of a tab, and I can just add that in, and you can see it will automatically add that for me. All right. So I'm going to turn back on those columns so we can take a look at it. So I like how this is looking, but I think this is too many words per line for the actual body copy. So what I need to do is I need to make this into a 2-column grid. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by selecting all the copy here. Actually, I don't even have to select it, just select the box. I'm going to go to Object Text Frame Options, and I'm going to say, okay, you know what? I actually want 2 columns within that text frame. I'm going to preview it. That looks much better. Okay. But now looking at this here, let's turn those off and see. Now looking at this here, I'm not really sure I like how the headline doesn't go across the entire top or the subhead. So what you can do is you can do something called span columns. I'm going to select all this type here, and you go under paragraph and span columns. And I'm going to say span all the columns. Let's preview that. All right. So now that is looking pretty good to me. Great. Okay. So what I have done here today is I've set up a very basic document. I used a 12-column grid. I have my layers, which let me make sure everything's on the right layer. That's on art. I'll move that just to text there. So everything's on my layers the way I'd like it. I have bleed set up so that if I did want this to go off the page, let me just show you how that looks too. So if we want this to go off the page, we just do that. Zoom in a little bit. Let's see. That's looking good. If you want to preview without the bleed, you can hit W and that goes into a preview mode. All right, that looks pretty good. So that is a very, very basic overview intro into what you do with InDesign. I'm excited for you all to dig in this program. It's one of my absolute favorites, and I think that you all will grow to love it as well. Thanks so much.